Hey guys, welcome to another puppy vlog, and in this video I am going to share what's in my hand, because in this hand is the best food for puppies in my honest and sincere opinion. And in this video I'm going to share my essential dog food checklist. This is a list I have been working on for years. My degree is in nutrition. Granted, it's human nutrition, but there are a lot of parallels. I have fostered dozens and dozens of rescue puppies. I'm helping to raise my mom's new little puppy, and this list details everything that I require when I'm looking for a puppy dog food. So let's just jump into this best puppy food video, right? Yeah. And to keep it sort of interesting and fun, I mean, who doesn't love watching a puppy eat? I'm gonna feed my mom's puppy. We like to have him in an SIT or a DOWN while feeding him. But I wanna start by talking about why this matters, why I am so passionate about dog food, puppy food, and pet nutrition. And the reason is that there is no other time in your dog's life that they're gonna grow and develop faster than when they are a puppy. Their bones, their joints, their brain, their muscles, their mental health is all going to be growing at an extraordinarily fast rate. So if there's any time to pick a nutrient-dense food, in my opinion, it is when they're a puppy. Obviously, I want them to eat healthy their entire life, but this is when you are going to make the biggest impact. And it is because of that, that as their pet parents and their pet guardians, we give them the most optimal nutrition for most optimal health. So with that said, let's jump into the puppy food list. In case you're wondering here, I won't show you, but I'm holding his food under my thumb, and only when he uses his tongue, I remove and release the food, just in case you're wondering what we're doing. I will show you at the end of this list later in the video exactly what we're feeding him and give you specific examples of what to pick, so stay tuned for that. But the first thing on the list that I look for in a puppy food is substantial meat content. So you can forget about those food with cheap fillers and cheap ingredients. Dogs are carnivores. Puppies are carnivores, and they need meat to survive and thrive. So you better believe that I'm going to require that the dog food that is going to be fed to my puppy or my mom's puppy or any puppy that I'm fostering is high in meat content. I generally look for high 80s to 90% or more meat content. And this is so important because, like I said before, your puppy's bone and joint development is gonna grow faster now when they're a puppy in that first 1 to 2 years than any time of their life. And what does your dog's bones and muscle health and brain health need to grow in the most optimal way? It needs healthy proteins, healthy amino acids. And then the second thing that is an absolute requirement when it comes to picking a puppy food is low carbohydrates. Just like you and I, dogs cannot thrive in the presence of excess carbs in their food. Why? What do carbs convert into? In the body, both humans and dogs for that matter, carbs convert into sugar. We all know that sugar can lead to excess inflammation and can really inhibit proper and healthy growth. Again, that's common sense. That's been widely studied, and nobody can really argue with that. You know, a lot of times with pet food, I look at pet food in a common sense way. What makes sense, common sense? What is most natural? What is a way that a dog would eat if given the chance to self-select? And dogs, you can look in the wild dogs, wolves, if you don't believe that dogs come from wolves, even domesticated dogs where they've done studies just letting them choose different macronutrient profiles. Mark Roberts, which is a PhD scientist in pet nutrition, actually did a study on dogs on his property. He has a bunch of working dogs, and he allowed them to self-select what macronutrients the dogs would eat. These were not wild dogs, they were domesticated. And in that, he found that the dogs did not prioritize carbohydrates. In fact, they prioritized healthy fats and protein in their diet, which makes common sense. In the wild, dogs aren't out there eating corn and potato and lentils. No, they're eating meat and fat. And here's a little pro tip, guys. When I'm selecting a food, my favorite formulation, my favorite guaranteed analysis profile on pet food, whether it's for an adult dog or a puppy, is something that's very low in carbohydrates and high in healthy fats, high in rich protein. When a dog eats this way, they're actually shifting their metabolism away from relying on carbs as the primary fuel source and towards using healthy fats as the primary fuel source. That's how dogs in the wild self-select, and that's how they optimally thrive. And it is widely known that these metabolic diseases, which run rampant in dogs, I guarantee, comment below if you know of a dog or if you personally have experience with a dog having cancer, diabetes, seizures like epilepsy, or overweight. These are metabolic conditions which can be highly exacerbated or made worse by the consumption of high carbohydrates. So it's really important to me that I'm not feeding my puppy or my dogs a high carb diet. Now for the third thing that I highly recommend and require when picking a puppy food is how the food is sourced. I need to know that the animals in the food and the ingredients in the food have been sourced from the US. I need to know that the animals have been treated properly, responsibly sourced, humanely raised, grass-fed, no antibiotics or added hormones. And as an animal lover, and in my opinion, there's never a reason to compromise this. And now for the next requirement on my essential puppy food list guide is minimal processing. So I highly recommend and I highly value foods that have been minimally processed or not processed at all. What I mean by that are foods that have been highly cooked, foods that are shelf stable and can sit on the shelf for several months up to years at a time, because what that tells me, if the food has been highly processed or if it's been mechanically separated, think of pink slime at the Big Arch fast food, I don't want to say the name, that food, the nutrients in that food have been made less bioavailable. So it's same thing. If you were to go to a fast food restaurant and get a food that's highly processed or eat chips or crackers, while it can be tasty, you're not getting very many nutrients from that. But if you're eating a whole fresh food salad with some healthy fats from avocado, maybe some healthy farm-raised animals, maybe some hard-boiled egg in there, the nutrients are going to be far more bioavailable, meaning that you can actually absorb it more than a food that's been highly processed. So when I'm picking a food for the puppy, I want to get the most bang for my buck. I want to give my dog food that they're actually going to get the full nutrient value from. Now for the next requirement on my list, and then after that, I'll talk about specific examples of food that I love for puppies, is I do not and would never pick foods that use a vitamin pack. So what is a vitamin pack? So there's a lot of foods out there that when you turn the bag over and you look at the nutrient panel, or the ingredient panel, I should say, you'll see a list of ingredients. And oftentimes it'll start with some kind of meat, maybe some meat bone, maybe some organ, and then all of a sudden you'll start seeing some ingredients that the names of them are really hard to read, and it's really long list, and it just doesn't seem natural. It looks like a lot of foreign ingredients, again, that are hard to comprehend. Those are foods that use vitamin packs, and the reason they use that is because they have to meet certain nutritional levels in the food based on AAFCO, which is the Food Regulation Organization for Pets, and in that situation, they're not putting enough whole, real foods in there to give the proper nutrients to the dog. So instead of just adding more real whole food, which costs more money, they just stuff the food with vitamin packs, which are often really hard to regulate. So it's really tough to know if they're getting too much of a vitamin, too less of a vitamin, and they're often very cheap and often coming from overseas. So it's just really hard to regulate. There's actually been a lot of recalls on foods that use vitamin packs. So for me, I'm looking for an ingredient deck that has minimal ingredients. Wally, you're being so good. Come over here. Come up here. Can you sit? Good boy. Guys, give this video a like if Wally is being a good boy. He's super hungry, but this is how I feed him. I work with him every day. My mom works with him every day, so he gets used to having all four paws on the ground. I do have videos linked up here on more training tips when it comes to puppies and really helping them set up for a positive foundation. We're also teaching him gentle here because I'm not really seeing the food until my thumb moves. So what does this food look like? Let's jump into the specifics here. You're probably watching this and going, okay, great. I agree with all of your sentiments, but okay, what one do I pick? So first off, I want to preface this next part of the video with, you are your dog's best advocate. And there's a lot of marketing out there that tell us one thing and makes it hard to believe, what is the best food for our dogs. I really want you, when you start feeling overwhelmed, to just take a step back and, like I said before, look at picking a food with a common sense approach. When you start looking at things that give all these value claims, really just look at the ingredient deck and see where the food is sourced and see how many different ingredients in there. And if it seems simple and if it seems right, then it most likely is. Okay. So what does this look like? What is in your hand, Rachel? What are you feeding Wally, and what is your specific recommendation? So I want to preface this with, you are your dog's best advocate. So I'm going to tell you what works for us, and you got to do what's best for you. But what Wally is eating, what's in my hand, is comprised of, can you see that? Raw, fresh food. And I'm going to tell you what that is in a moment. But this is raw fresh food that we got from a local independent pet store. And what I mean by raw, it is comprised of raw meat, raw bone, raw organ. It is not processed at all, meaning it's not cooked, it's not mechanically separated, it's not processed. It's food in its natural form. And there are, of course, no vitamin packs. But let me go into more detail what I mean. So when my mom adopted Wally and we brought him into our life, when I brought in my 2 dogs in my life, I want them, Wally included, to live as long as possible. Not just live, but I want them to thrive. And I want to feed them what you guys may have heard before as a biologically or species appropriate diet, meaning what they would eat if they were given their own devices and their own ability to go pick their own food. Guys, kibble has only been around for about 100 years. And dogs have been around far longer than 100 years. So what did dogs eat before kibble? They ate scraps from the farm or from their human's table. That's what they ate: meat, crushed raw bones, organs. I know you guys may be thinking, wait, I thought they're not supposed to eat bones. Any bones in this food have been crushed and they're completely raw. No, I do not feed cooked bones ever and do not recommend it. But in my opinion and in my experience, feeding a nutritionally dense, biologically appropriate food is the single most important thing to help my dogs live a long, healthy life. You know, it can't guarantee that they're never going to get sick or never get injured, but if I had to pick one thing that I prioritize, there's several, but if I had to pick one thing that I would prioritize in making sure that my dog would be happy and healthy, would be feeding them a raw, fresh food diet that is the most nutrient dense option for dogs. Because one, a raw, fresh food diet is stored in the freezer. You defrost it in the fridge and then you feed it like this. It just kind of comes looking like a hamburger patty. And this food has never met an oven. It's never been cooked. And so that means it's not shelf stable. So think about all these bags of kibble you find in these pet stores that are able to sit there for months and months or even years at a time. How healthy do you think that truly is? It's no different than you and I walking up the grocery store aisle where all the processed foods are. We all know that processed foods are not optimal for health. Can you survive on processed foods? Could you eat nothing but Cheerios the rest of your life and probably live? You probably could. Many of you probably could. But would you be thriving and would you be eating for the most optimal health? I wouldn't think so. And that's how I look at feeding dogs. Dogs were never meant to eat kibble. Go show me any kibble that has been grown on a tree. In my opinion, in my experience, dogs thrive when given the opportunity to eat a food that they were biologically meant to eat. Their entire digestive system, they have a shorter digestive tract. They have more acid in their stomach. The teeth, they have carnivore teeth that are meant for tearing and pulling and chewing on food. This is all complete signs, black and white signs that you can't really argue against, that they need to eat a diet of food, meat, bones, and organ. They don't need corn, potatoes, starch, lentils. What are the other foods that they put in these dogs? Carrots. They don't need all these fillers. So the diet that he eats is actually 90 to 95% meat, bone, and organ. It's all completely raw. Like I said, it's all sourced from small family farms, and there's only a little bit of produce in there to help ensure he gets all of the micronutrients. It's packed with healthy fats, healthy proteins, and very, very, very low in carbohydrates. It is in my strong opinion and based on my experience that dogs need, not just want, but need fresh food with whole ingredients where their nutrients actually come from real foods. Never in my experience have I met a dog that absolutely needs fillers, preservatives, additives, byproducts, high carb foods, genetically modified foods, additives, grains, potatoes. That has never been the case for dog. These are ingredients that are added to food to make it cheap and accessible and easy. But we love our dogs, and I know you watching this love your dog. And to you, it's not about doing what's easiest or cheapest. To you, it's about doing what's best for your dog for longevity and health. And before I talk about where you can get these kind of foods and maybe some specific examples of ones that I really like in the marketplace, I want to talk about the fact that some of you watching this may say, okay, great, I agree with everything you're saying, that's awesome, but I can't afford a raw fresh food diet, or I'm really scared or nervous of feeding a raw fresh food diet. And I want to give you guys a couple tips there. One, I believe that a little bit of raw fresh food can go a long way. So many people that watch this channel actually feed a kibble, and I'll give an example of a kibble in a moment, that if I had to feed a kibble, it's what I would feed. But what they'll do is they'll feed a kibble, but one meal a day, they'll feed raw fresh food. So they'll do one or the other, or they'll add a little bit of raw fresh food ingredients to the bowl. Here's a video up here of some good examples of ingredients you can add to the bowl to add a little bit of life to the bowl. Because at the end of the day, everybody has different desires and needs, and I don't want you to feel bad for any decision that you make, but I do want you to understand and know so that you're at least making the most educated decision that you can, and understand that, again, a little bit of raw fresh food can go a massive way in your dog's health. A couple examples you can add in are some raw goat milk, some bone broth with no seasoning or salt added, some canned sardines, again in water, no salt or anything added, or some fresh lightly steamed broccoli is a really good ingredient to add some healthy fiber to the food that you can do if you're only feeding a kibble. And so if I had to pick a kibble to feed my dogs, I had no other choice in the whole world, the one I would pick would be Carnivore. There's a couple others I kind of like, but Carnivore, I'll have it linked down below, and it's not sold everywhere. So I do have a video linked up here on a little bit more of what I would look for in a kibble. If you're watching this, you're like, look, I'm gonna commit to adding some fresh food to my dog's diet, but for whatever reason, I can't only feed them a raw food diet and I need some good kibble recommendations. I have a video linked up here, and it's also in the description below on some good ways to look for and purchase a kibble in my experience. I'm not a kibble expert, but I have a lot of experience with kibble, especially working in the rescue world that I do. A lot of them come to me eating kibble. So first off, before I show you some of my favorite raw food brands, I'm trying to show you here the goat milk that I'm gonna be giving him. There you go, it's just raw goat milk, and it's packed with healthy fats, electrolytes, digestive enzymes, probiotics, so it's really good for him. There you go, and I just give it to him as a treat. Oh,